Community Affairs and as Executive Director of the Georgia Residential Finance Authority. Chancellor Huckabee has represented Georgia House District 113 as a Republican. He is a board member of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, and the Georgia Partnership for Excellence in Education. He was a member of the Georgia Competitiveness Initiative Steering Committee in 2011 and currently serves on the Georgia Higher Education Funding Commission. Chancellor Huckabee serves as a trustee of Young Harris College, where he earned an associate's degree. Mr. Huckabee earned both his bachelor's and master's degrees from Georgia State University. He continued his education through additional graduate studies at the University of Georgia. The former resident of Douglasville, as a former resident of Douglasville, Chancellor Huckabee was active in the local community and was named the 1995 Douglas County Man of the Year. Please give us a warm welcome for Chancellor Huckabee.
Well, good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to spend a few minutes talking to you about the university system of Georgia. I imagine many in the room have done work for our system at various campuses around the state. What I plan to do maybe is just speak for 15, 20 minutes and then open it up to questions that you might have about the university system. I was very privileged and honored to be asked to be Chancellor of the university system. It's not a position that I sought, having just been elected to the Georgia legislature. But it's one that I am enjoying. I'm enjoying it because, true to his word, when I met with the governor, I asked him one last question, and that was he willing to support significant change in the way the university system of Georgia did business? And he said yes. If he had said no, I would still be a member of the Georgia legislature. Because I felt very strongly that public higher education especially had to adjust to a different model, a different environment going forward. And that's what we've been working on during my time as Chancellor. Many of you who are familiar with the way we work, you know there have been a lot of changes just in staff and organizational structure in the system office. Quite frankly, when I came into this office, I knew there were issues, concerns, but I didn't realize they were quite as deep-seated as I found them to be. And one of those issues revolved around how we just did our work day to day. And the way we did our work day to day was in silos that had been well designed and constructed and not breached very often. When I talk about a new normal, which public higher education is work today, it's a concept that's easily to get the nodding of the head, but it's very much more difficult to get it really embraced in a way that will make a difference on how we go about providing public higher education. And every day we work very hard to give real meaning to what we talk about in the new normal. That has a great deal of implications for what you do. Clearly in the university system and then in the state of Georgia. The university system is by far the largest property owner, facilities owner in the state. We have over 3,400 buildings, almost 90 million gross square feet, around now 31 campuses, soon to be 30 campuses. We have a growing need for certain kinds of facilities, but a diminishing need for other kinds of facilities. To that end, I totally reorganized and restructured our facilities function in the system office, hired new personnel with a different personality, with a different philosophy on how we go about our business. I come to believe very firmly that if we're going to be successful in providing the quality education that Georgians need, we have got to be more collaborative in everything we do, both internally and externally. Within the university system office, there was very little collaboration. The people who approved new academic programs did not talk to the budget folks about the budget implications or the physical facility implications. A recipe made for disaster, and quite frankly, we have identified certain things that if we don't change, will lead to disaster, particularly financially. So we have worked very hard to break down those barriers of communication. We have what we call an integrated review process, which means that if you as a president proposes to us to create a new degree program, it's not just the academic side of the house that looks at that. The academic side starts with it, but the budget folks have their input, the facilities folks have their input. So it is a joint collaborative decision as to whether we go forward with that degree program or not. We look at the need for that degree program, we look at the physical facility implications. If in fact 5 or 6 years forward, if that program meets its projected enrollment, then it may have facility implications. That's okay. We just need to plan for that and recognize that in 4 or 5 years, we're going to be hearing from that university or college to build then that facility that's needed, so that we're not surprised by it. Unfortunately, that's a new way of thinking in our office and at the campus level, but it's beginning to take hold. Related to that, one of the first things I did, I think the September after I became chancellor in July 2011, was to announce to the board and staff that we were going to initiate what we call the space utilization review process. Now, these kinds of reviews on the campus level have been done before, but the sad reality is that each campus did its own review. It was not an external review. And so you can imagine what the results always were. They were doing just fine. Well, we took 1.5 years, almost 2 years, to effect that utilization study. And we found, not surprisingly, that the range of space utilization to the system was tremendous. As low as 25% space utilization to a little over 75. And 75 probably is about as high as good as you're going to be able to get. And not surprisingly too, well, it did surprise me, the campus that has the greatest, the most efficient space utilization is Georgia College. But we have a number of institutions that are as low as 25%. Now that realization, because we were very candid with our presidents up front, that this is not an academic exercise. It will drive decisions. It will drive allocation of funding for new facilities or renovation of existing facilities. And it already has had, in some cases, a chilling effect on what might be in the president's mind's eye is what buildings they would like to have next. In some cases, those facilities have disappeared off of their list of capital priorities. At the same time, we think our schools have gotten the message, and they're beginning to look for ways where they can really increase their utilization, because they know we're not going to improve new facilities until they do. From a specific standpoint, what we found in that study, that particular category of space was particularly not needed in terms of new construction. We found that we had enough basic classrooms that would probably meet our needs for the next 10 years. Those of you who have worked on campus, well, quite frankly, one of the things that contributes to that, I've worked on campus and I know the mentality, that if the political science department is in this building they seem to think of that as their building. And they don't want anybody else offering classes or courses in that building. Those barriers have been broken down everywhere that we speak. Now, that does not mean that we won't build new facilities. We will. But they're going to be based on need. They're going to be based on a timetable that makes sense and is supported by the growth trajectory of that particular school. Specialty facilities like laboratory buildings, engineering buildings, will always continue to be needed. For example, we recommended only two new construction projects, new construction for the FY 2015 budget. One was the new South Campus Science facility on the University of Georgia, and one was a performing arts classroom center at Albany State University. One that had been, quite frankly, designed 3 or 4 years ago, had been being considered and promised for 10 to 15 years, and one that houses currently at Albany State 4 departments in one small building, 10,000 square feet, that sits in the floodplain of the Flint River. That project, there's a lot of politics around it, and I've got some of the scars to prove it. That project is being refreshed in terms of design money, and hopefully that will be constructed, approved for 2016 budget construction. That points out that our emphasis has shifted in 2 regards. Away from new construction to, 1, renovating and maintaining better what we already have. And secondly, the reinstitution of something we did when I was state budget director in Zell Miller is create a category of projects we call small capital projects, typically $5 million and below. And we have found that is a tremendous need for that all over this system. And it's easier to meet the need financially of a campus with $5 million than try to get a $15 to $20 million project funded. And the small cap program was eliminated in Governor Perdue's administration. And you can go back and look at the time that was eliminated to the gradual escalation and the cost of the typical new construction project. So that's an program that we think will continue to grow. It's one that has been well received by the state legislature. And the governor, we submit lists to him of our ranked projects. He chooses not to recommend any himself, but he does give the legislature leeway to add up to $50 million in new capital projects per house. So we will probably get our fair share, if not a little more, of that $100 million. Now for this year, FY 15, we requested about $240 million in new construction. We'll probably come to get close to getting that much. But more of it will be in these small cap project areas and MRR, major repair and renovation. We could easily spend appropriately $100 million a year for the next 5, 6, 7 years around our system. I know when I was at the University of Georgia as chief financial officer, that was one of the most confounding issues we dealt with. We probably had $100 to $200 million of deferred maintenance on our campus alone. System-wide, we still say 200 million. We really, quite frankly, don't know. So we requested this year $80 million in the MRR fund. The governor recommended 60, and we've been working closely with the state legislative leadership not to use that as a fund source. Keep us at least at the $60 million level, and so that we can really begin to make greater progress on meeting those needs on our campus. So we're confident and excited that if we can stay on this basis for the next 4, 5, 6 years with small cap projects, with the MRR funding increasing, that we make a tremendous impact on this campus, in this system. Now, there will continue to be new construction projects. I don't know which architect firm is working with Georgia Tech, but the renovation and repurposing really of their library, the Guthrie Library, which is in effect going to be about almost a $90 million project. Will probably the first phase of that will come in the 16 budget, and the next phase 17 budget. So there will still be tremendous needs for large capital facilities, but they will most primarily be in the science, technology, technical area. General classroom buildings, except at Georgia Gwinnett, probably will not be required. I'd be happy to talk with you about anything you want to talk about in the university system, but let me tell you one thing that not create anxiety, but it creates a situation when it requires a delicate balancing. When I came into this position, there was emerging some displeasure among some of the state leadership that some of the buildings we were building were too opulent. They should have been more utilitarian. And there were 2 or 3 examples where they felt they would point out where we thought we had gone overboard in the design and planning of those buildings. There are times when I agree that we can perhaps get caught up too much with, I know you architects want to have that seminal building that you design and construct. But at the same time, as I recognize some of the concern, I do not feel that we should fall into the trap of building facilities that do not have some aesthetic quality to them that will remain over time. I tell some legislators from time to time, those I feel more comfortable telling them this, that I'm very relieved that the founding fathers did not shortchange the Library of Congress building. Those kinds of structures, and that's my favorite building in Washington, those kinds of structures says something about the soul and spirit of this country. And I'm so glad that they built that kind of facility. And we can't afford to build a Library of Congress kind of facility on every one that we build. But we should try to maintain some balance between utility, functionality, and also aesthetics and appearance. And so that's one we struggle with. We have, I know you from time to time will probably have some feedback, maybe even pushback on some of the facilities you may design for us. But we do think hope you will work with us to meet a happy medium where we can build a functional building that also have a level of appearance and aesthetics that will make us proud long after we're gone that we had the foresight to build construct those kinds of facilities on our campus. I can't remember who designed the Special Collections Library, the Richard Russell Building on the University of Georgia campus, but it would have been a shame for us to just build the square blocks there, because that facility is a statewide asset, and it says a great deal to me about this state and what we care about our history and heritage of Georgia and its culture. There are many other things that we're doing in the university system to chart out a new course that will allow us to do a better job of educating our young citizens in the state. One of the things that frustrates me most today is whenever I speak to groups, particularly to civic groups, is to talk about the value of a college education. To me, it's amazing that in this time and era, and if we have any understanding of the future at all, that so many people beginning to question in very sharp terms about the value and need for what people in my business do. Of course, your business as well. There's never been a time when we need a more broadly educated workforce or citizenry than it is now. And that need is only going to grow. So I tell even high school groups that those people whom you hear raise questions about the value of going to college, or urge them not to listen to that. It's a siren song that's going to lead to a very tragic ending, because we not only need people for the workforce, and we hear this all the time from the business community, we need people for our community, we need people for good parents, we need good citizens. Without that, we will not be able to preserve the kind of nation we want. We'll not be able to preserve the democracy that we have. So even as far back, some of my conservative friends who always love to quote Thomas Jefferson, they quote Thomas Jefferson selectively. But if you look at the broad work of Thomas Jefferson, he was first and foremost a man of education. And he said the key to preserving at that time, and still this experiment of democracy, was we had to educate our citizens. And of course, he was the father of the University of Virginia, one of the more outstanding universities in our country. So to any extent you ever have an opportunity to share your thoughts with friends, neighbors, that you will be one of those people who do not fall into the trap of condemning or questioning the value of higher education. It's a dead-end street, and we need the support of people like yourselves in that regard. You wouldn't be where you are today if you weren't for college education. So we hear the message about the cost of higher education, and we're working on that, and we will have some exciting things to announce over the next 3 or 4 months about some things that we're putting in place. But I would urge you to urge your friends to hang in there with us. We'll get to where we need to be. It's not going to be overnight, but we will get there, and we certainly want your support in that. And then we close by saying thank you for what you do for us and with us when you do have an opportunity to do business with the university system of Georgia, because you're an important part of what we do. Mr. President, I'm going to stop and see if there are any questions.